Well, welcome to OnPoint Live right here from the Manhattan Beach studios, where we talk about what's happening in the sports world. Hello, everybody. I'm Vince Ferragamo, former Rams Super Bowl quarterback, and alongside me is my good buddy and 20-year NFL legend, Hall of Famer Jackie Slater. And Jack, how you doing today, Jackie?
I'm doing pretty good today, Vince.
Man, I tell you.
I'm refreshed.
Yeah, exactly. Did you watch those games yesterday?
Yes, I did.
Over the
I
weekend?
certainly did.
Okay,
You don't miss those games, those local games.
Hey, the Lakers and the Clippers both victorious, Jackie, in the quarter round semifinals of this NBA championship series. And you know, we saw the Dodgers and the Angels didn't do so well, Jackie.
Yeah,
they came up short by one run against the Red Sox and the Cubs. But you know what? You had to be impressed with the Lakers. That was a big, impressive win. And the Clippers,
both of them,
beating the Suns with Kevin Durant. That team that was supposed to go all the way, Jackie.
both of those teams showed up big. And you know, about 3 weeks ago, I heard a lot of the prognosticators talking about the Lakers, and they said that this team is healthy and gets into the playoffs, they got an opportunity to do a lot of damage. And I think when they went over here and play John Morant and those guys in Memphis, I think that they really opened up a lot of eyes because that game, in my opinion, was never really close.
It wasn't.
And
the blowout.
And it wasn't like they were depending on LeBron James to do every single thing. He kind of laid out and was very selective about the shots he took, very selective about the passes he made, and he had a lot of assists in that ball game. So team basketball was being played, and I like the way they've integrated all of these young guys into what they're doing at the Lakers. It was impressive.
Yeah, that was a team win, Jackie, for sure. You know, they're playing better defense, too. They're going to have to do that to advance.
And nobody picked the Clippers, by the way. Nobody picked the Clippers. I had to go there and deal with Kevin Durant and Chris Paul and Booker.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody thought that
Russell Westbrook played a good defensive game.
He had a heck of a game. He had a heck of a game, and he gave a shout out at the Lakers by letting them know that, hey, I'm capable of doing more than scoring, and there's a whole lot more involved in pro basketball than just shooting and being accurate all the time there. So he's a real dual, triple threat. He plays defense, he passes the ball, he rebounds. He's a very good basketball
Let's
player.
hope it continues, Jackie, for the local fans here.
Really.
But we have to talk a little football, though, Jackie. You know, we got to talk about the Los Angeles Rams coming up in this draft. You know, what they need and where are they going to select. Now, we talked about what they have coming up, Jackie. They have the 36th overall pick. Okay, they have a second rounder and 2/3. Give me, in your estimation, what are the three most important areas of the field they have to build on?
Vince, you make me laugh thinking about this, man. The Rams have got so many holes to fill. I mean, the onus is really going to be on Les Snead and his staff. They've got to come up with some diamonds in the rough. And trust me, there are plenty of those out there. I mean, all you had to do is just look back over the years. They drafted Cooper Kupp in the 3rd round. Damian Lewis, I believe his name is, the starting left guard with the Seattle Seahawks. I think he was a 2nd-round pick. The 36th overall pick is what they have. And Buda Baker, the great safety over there, Arizona, was drafted there. And Deebo Samuels was drafted with that same pick. So there are diamonds in the rough. It just depends on the work that the scouting team has done, and I'm trusting that they've done their work under Les Snead, and I'm looking for whoever that first pick is for them to be a special contributor this coming season.
It's so ironic, Jackie, that Deebo Samuel and Buda Baker were both the 36th pick overall.
Absolutely,
in the draft.
Exact
So
same
that's what
pick that the Rams had. So I want to hear any. We didn't have any first-round picks. This is a prime pick. And it's got to be a prime decision made on a guy that can come in and make an impact on this team.
I don't know about you, but I think the needs first being the offensive line. In the offensive line, they got to shore that up. And I think their second pick has to come from a wide receiver. I think that's their second biggest need because they need someone to complement Cooper Kupp, okay, Jackie, in the passing game. And thirdly, I think they have to build that defensive line a little bit more. I mean, Aaron Donald is a force there, but you need to have an outside rusher. You need someone else.
You need an edge guy.
So those are my three priorities, I think, for the Rams. What are your three?
My priorities is, first of all, where I made my living, and that's in the offensive line. I know the value of that position. You've got to draft some guards. They lost David Edwards. He left and went to Buffalo, and he was a contributor there. They lost numerous other guys, and they played with a bunch of guys, traveling kind of guys. They're going to have to draft a solid offensive lineman, kind of like Jamari Sawyer over there with the Chargers a year ago. Telesco did a hell of a job bringing him in, and he made major contributions. That's what the Rams are going to have to look for with this pick, and I think that pick should be spent on an offensive lineman. From there, where do you go? I mean, the sky's the limit, Vince. The Rams don't have a kicker. They do not have a punter. They do not have a deep snapper. How do you acquire all these people? Now, sure, there's some free agents out there that you can go and sign and everything, but you've got to make sure these guys are top at their position so they can make a major contribution to a Super Bowl quality football team. So I think the offensive line, I think the next thing they got to do is they got to complement, like you said, Aaron Donald on the defensive line with pass rush. They've got to replace a couple of pretty good edge rushers, Terrell Lewis and Leonard Floyd. Both were edge rushers that brought it off the edge pretty good for them. They've got to get one of those guys, get somebody who's special in that area. And then from there, in my opinion, they got to get some secondary. They got to get some high mental thinking secondary players that can come in and gel with the people that they have already. So at the very least, they can play with some sort of a continuity, some unity. You know, that's a critical position as I see it.
Well, you've heard of the term coverage sack, Jackie, and that really has to do with the defensive pass rush.
Absolutely.
Okay, because their secondary can play mediocre back there, but if you have a good pass rush, they can make some plays in the secondary. So I do agree with you there. Special teams, another need. Let's talk a little bit about the Chargers, Jackie. Well, Chargers have a little ways to go, too.
Well, you know what? This is a little concerning to me because Austin Ekeler is, 200 pounds, something like that. He's a little guy. And, you know, he's not the type of guy that you think about when you think about loading up your offensive run game. You know, a guy you can get a football to 30 times. You don't look at Austin Ekeler as that type of a guy. Tom Telesco and his staff has got their hands full because they have brought in Kellen Moore, the new offensive coordinators, to work with young Justin Herbert. But if you remember when they lost that game to Jacksonville, after having that 27-point lead, what they were not able to do in that ball game was consistently run the ball. And I don't want to blame their offensive line for it. I blame the inconsistency of mentally saying we got to run this football now. So I'm looking for them over there to go out and get themselves a good running back. But the thing that concerns me is this. Austin Ekeler, he recently said that the Chargers told him that they don't want to talk about an extension or adding anything to his situation. Mm-hmm. This was the first time, Austin said this was the first time in my career where I felt disrespected by our own organization. He said, it sucks. He said, I want to be a Charger. He's set to make $6.25 million this year in 2023, and it's a number that many teams don't want to touch when you start talking about trading. So to me, Austin Ekeler was a centerpiece in what they did. I mean, just Vince, look at his stats. The guy had 919 yards rushing. He toted the tater 204 times. Yeah. And then on top of that, Justin Herbert threw in the ball for 107 times. So that's 311 touches. That's 311 touches that he had, Vince.
He's the workhorse, Jack.
Vince, he averaged on those touches 5.6 yards per touch. And he had 19 touches on an average in 16 weeks. If you don't pay a guy, if you don't reward a guy, if you don't put a guy like that on your pedestal in your organization, then there's something wrong. And what are you saying to everybody else if you take the most prolific offensive threat that you have? Remember now, they got Keenan Allen and some other guys over there catching passes and making a lot of money, and you're going to treat this guy like this? I have a problem with it. I think that Austin Ekeler is justifiably angry. He should be, and that it's going to be ugly if they don't have him.
In my estimation, Jackie, you have to reward a player like that with what he's been able to produce on the field.
Absolutely.
And pound for pound, he's the toughest guy on that squad.
Absolutely.
Probably in the NFL. I mean, his size, don't let his size kid you, all right, Jackie? He's scored over 63 touchdowns in his 6 years with the Chargers. That's over 10 touchdowns per year. Guess who led the team in touchdown receptions this past year?
He did.
Austin Ekeler. He had 5. He had more than Mike Williams, more than Keenan Allen, more than the rest of the squad.
Absolutely.
Okay, so,
and that's just receiving.
Yeah, and you know how many yards he rushed for? He rushed for 915 yards, Jackie, for 4.5 yards per carry average.
Absolutely.
So when you
and 13 rushing touchdowns, Vince. Don't forget that.
13 rushing touchdowns.
The man scored 18 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's a scoring machine.
Yeah.
So in my mind, okay, I can see where he's a little upset that he's
A
not
little
being
upset.
respected.
A little upset.
But, look, but he's in his 7th year coming this year. And, running backs usually make, maybe 10 years at
10
max.
good years, yeah.
But he's a little bit on the smaller side, so he probably has a little bit more of longevity.
Yeah, because he don't take a lot of
NFL.
shots.
He doesn't take a lot of shots.
His whole game is avoiding the big shots.
But he is tough when he carries the football, Jackie. So I'm thinking, as I look at this, I think they should wrap him up. The Chargers should wrap him up for 3 more years, okay? Because this guy's not one of those guys that's going to come out and dog it. He's not. He's going to play each and every week, Jack. He's going to give it 100% effort. That's just the nature of this player.
Right.
And that's the kind of guy that I want on my team, and I want him to be a focal point in my offense.
And one last thing, Vince, as an offensive lineman, if I'm sitting there watching this, knowing what he has done, and I see that the organization is not going to reward him and put him in a position where he continue to make those plays for as long as he can, then now I'm thinking, what is he going to do? What are they going to do when my situation come up? If they're going to treat Austin Ekeler like this, what are they going to do to me? Some fat guy that you don't even know my name over there. So it's a problem. I don't know how they see it. Tom Telesco has generally done a good job with player selection and player acquisition. He speaks highly of those receivers and how they, you got to have those guys. Yeah. But he just brought Kellen Moore here from Dallas to integrate the running game with what they're doing in the passing game. And if he doesn't factor this guy in, this is one of their key pieces, I think that's where he would be really missing the mark. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So, Vince, to move on a little bit,
okay.
I follow the Patriots quite often, as you know, with my son being there and all that. And it was reported that the Patriots were shopping Mac Jones. They want to trade him. I know that they had Malik Cunningham in, the good wide receiver from over at Louisville that broke all
the quarterback.
Yeah, that broke all of Lamar Jackson's records.
Right.
They had a couple of quarterbacks in visiting with them this offseason.
Yeah.
But the word has it, and there's a rumor that the Patriots are shopping Mac Jones. That means they're trying to trade him. Now, do you think Belichick would make a move with Mac Jones after what we've seen over the last couple of years? Now, I got to say this too, Vince.
Well, wait a minute.
This is the rumor.
Okay.
The rumor has it that Mac Jones, after Bill Belichick installed Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator. You know, Matt Patricia is a defensive mind.
Coordinator.
He installed him as his offensive coordinator.
Right.
And then Mac Jones got on the phone and called back some of the coaches and some of his confidants at the Alabama Crimson Tide organization to get some advice as to how to handle the situation. Now, he's got Bill Belichick right there. Why didn't he talk to Bill about it? I mean, to me, if I'm playing for Bill Belichick, whatever Bill Belichick says, that's what's going to go. I don't need to talk to anybody outside that. I don't need any information. I don't need any more information because this guy right here is the best head coach in the history of this league.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about that?
Well, you saw the Chris Jones move, right? At the end of that game, when they had the game, they could have went in overtime, Jackie, and instead of making that tackle, I mean, he's a quarterback, but let's make a tackle.
Yeah, make a tackle.
Let's stop this guy in his tracks right here, you know? And, he kind of pushed him aside and ran in for the touchdown.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they lose that game. So, I mean, I think you look at Mac Jones being, what he came from his collegiate days at Alabama. He went to the national championship, won the national championship. He was a quality quarterback there. But, I think maybe what's hurt him a little bit is not having that guru, that offensive coordinator, that quarterback coach that you could really learn from in the NFL. And, coaching is so important at that. And as you look around the league, some of the great quarterbacks out there, they're getting coached up on the sidelines. So,
well, don't you think Bill O'Brien being back there now is going to make a
huge
difference?
I think that will definitely help. I mean, he's back in the mold now. He's got an offensive guy back helping out with the offense. And I think, when Bill Belichick looks back at this team, he's going to have to say, hey, I got to get specialty guys here. I got to get an offensive guy to call the plays on offense. And I think that's going to definitely help the Patriots. But the Patriots are in the AFC East, Jackie. You've got Miami. You've got Buffalo. You've got the Jets now. It's loaded.
As the young people would say, you've got some dogs in there.
So they got some work to do, Jack.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Now, Vince, another thing, keeping with quarterbacks, and I know how you follow this. The San Francisco 49ers general manager, John Lynch, did not close the door on the possibility of a trade for Trey Lance. He's thinking that Brock Purdy would be the unquestioned QB1 if, it depends on how his elbow and everything heals up. Right. But he's coming off that surgery and all. Sam Darnold, the third pick in the 2018 now, is there, and a favorite of Kyle Shanahan's, I understand. Could potentially, in your mind, there come about a trade? Remember what they gave up for Trey Lance a couple years ago?
Oh my God.
Can you see them all of a sudden? The guy hadn't played that much football, and all of a sudden now they're talking about trading. Can you see that being a reality?
I actually can see it being a reality, Jackie, and simply because of this fact, because of what they've seen from Trey Lance since he's come to the 49ers. He's got great coaching there. He hasn't had a lot of collegiate experience. They kind of drafted him on a whim because they went after the 5th pick overall in that first round to get him, thinking, hey, he's our franchise quarterback. They sat Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Jimmy had to come back, save the team, and then it went on with Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant.
Right.
But Brock Purdy...
the last player picked in the draft.
Exactly. And Brock Purdy, I think, Jackie, he's ahead of schedule on his rehab for his shoulder and his elbow. So I think, he's coming along. And now what they got Sam Darnold back there, they didn't go after Sam Darnold just to have him on the team. They got him as a backup, pretty much. So it makes Trey Lance dispendable, So I think,
So they got to be hoping that there's somebody out there that was looking to draft him when they moved up and drafted him a couple of years ago. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, they're going to have to just admit they made a mistake, I would imagine. But, he still is he's a decent quarterback. It's just that, there's too much potential there, but you can't really see it coming.
They haven't been able to unlock it.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be able to unlock this potential. And sometimes the coaches can do a great job of that. Right. And sometimes the coaches can do all that they can do, and they realize that it's just not working. And so that's when they get a consensus that, hey, we need to move on from this guy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Now I got another quarterback question for you.
A lot of quarterback questions, man.
At least, Vince, this is something for us to think about, because I know a couple of years ago when Cam Newton was, wrapping up what we thought his career, and he finished up at the Rams, and I think he bumped to another team after that. Yeah. Well, this offseason, Cam Newton says there ain't 32 players playing quarterback in the National Football League that's better than me. I mean, he's still loaded with confidence. There's no doubt about that. He recently took part in Auburn's Pro Day, but he heard from 0 NFL teams after his workout and everything.
Right.
But he said this, Vince. He said, I'd be willing to be a backup in certain situations, certain circumstances. Okay. And then he listed those circumstances, those teams that he would be willing to go to as a backup. Now, I'm just going to we're going to have our producer put these teams up and these quarterbacks up. But listen, Vince.
Yeah. There they are.
He wants to go to the Browns with
Deshaun
Watson,
right.
The Ravens and backup Lamar Jackson, right. The Bears and backup Justin Fields, Malik Willis at the Titans, Jalen. He said Aaron Rodgers, but I wonder about that. Jalen Hurts at the Eagles, Josh Allen at the Buffalo Bills. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at those veteran quarterbacks right there, the thing that's central to all of them is that they're operating in offenses where their coaches know that one of their strengths is their ability to run with the football.
Right.
So I'm thinking in my mind that he's probably thinking, if I go to one of those teams and one of those guys get hurt running the football, now they got me as a backup and we can run the same plays. Okay?
That's right.
Then the other requirement that he said he'd consider is going to teams that would draft the top 4 quarterbacks in this year's draft. Now, what that says to me is he might be thinking, okay, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, all of these guys are potential first-round picks. If I go there, there's a good possibility that these kids are going to be on a learning curve that's not going to put them on the field right away, and so I'll get to play. So it seems to me that Cam Newton is looking at the opportunity to get on the field the quickest when he's making his decision about where he would go. What do you think about it? Is my philosophy, does it hold any air?
No, I think it does, Jackie. But let's ask a question first. When quarterbacks are dropping like flies, what teams were reaching out for Cam Newton? Nobody. And he's been a free agent for a whole year this past year, Jackie. And there's no signs of anyone signing him. So he's come out publicly and wants to, make it known that he's available and he'll be a welcome backup.
Right.
One of these
and that 32 people aren't better than him.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Don't forget
Well,
that
he had
part.
to put that plug in, right?
Yeah,
Jack?
that's right.
Well, Cam Newton, when I look at it, I think that ship has sailed at this point because I saw what Cam, he was excellent, as a young quarterback coming in this league. He had the running ability, he could do things, he had a knack for doing some great things offensively.
He did.
Got his team to the Super Bowl.
And he wasn't so bad from the pocket, Vince.
No. And then I think as his career progressed, I saw a drop off in him throwing the football. And I think maybe it was just overconfident or maybe not working hard enough on it or just not having the natural talent to be a great thrower. And so, any combination of things could have happened to him over the years. But you know what? He had a decent career in the NFL, but
I would agree with that.
He wants to continue playing if he can. Unlike some other players that want to retire early and move on, into the business world. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with Cam this year. But there's so many good quarterbacks in my mind that are coming out of college right now that have had great learning experiences throwing the football, Jackie. And so they're coming in NFL-style quarterbacks. And, we see 4 top quarterbacks coming in this year. Maybe 5.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about some of those guys later.
And when you think about Anthony Richardson, just to wrap this up, Anthony Richardson is maybe a clone of Cam Newton. He's younger. He's very athletic. He can jump. He can throw. He can do it all. He can run. And so that guy right there could be the modern day Cam.
How about that Hendon Henderson from Tennessee, Jackie?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one good player. Everybody's kind of overlooked him a little bit.
Very much so. And it's because of that ACL injury that occurred this past season. But the interesting thing about him is funny you bring his name up. The interesting thing about him is that prognosticators, draft analysts have looked at this guy's career. They've talked to the coach. This is what the coach said. Coach Hoople said, I've never seen a player manage a game from a play-by-play situation better than him. Now, that's saying an awful lot, Vince, when you think about all the stuff you guys have to deal with as quarterbacks.
Jack, the SEC is not an easy conference.
No,
that's
not at all.
From game to game, week to week, okay? I've seen him play, and I've seen some composure back there as a quarterback. And I think that's number one in my mind, is do I have a quarterback that's mentally sharp and that's composed under any kind of conditions, Jackie? And he's physically talented. He can run a little bit if he wants to, but he's got a really good arm. And they're questioning whether he can see down the field. I don't really question that at all with this guy. They were saying, well, he was a play-action type of quarterback and just select 1 or 2 guys.
Right.
That's not in my mind. I mean, I think he can go back and he can get the right guy. And he has time. If he has time, he'll pick out the right receiver to throw to. And he's made a lot of great plays, and he brought that Tennessee team from nothing up to something again.
National prominence.
Really.
National prominence.
And that says a lot about a quarterback.
It really does. It really does. His leadership, special.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Next interesting comment came from the Miami Dolphins, Jackie. And we're talking about Tyreek Hill. Tyreek is playing out his last contract, Jackie. He's got 3 years till 2025. But he is saying that once he's 31 years old, he wants to retire and get into the business world and start his business side of things. Do you think that Tyreek will see more dollars at the end of a conclusion of his current contract and want to stay, or you think he's going to retire at age 31 after 10 years in the league?
That's a really interesting question to me, Vince, primarily because this guy over the next 3 years, he's going to make $90 million.
That ought to be enough money, isn't it, Jackie? Do you need more than $90 million?
I put myself in his shoes when I was his age, and I'm thinking to myself, I've played 10 years now. Yeah. If I made $90 million, $30 million a year for the years 7, 8, 9, and 10, would I have kept playing?
Yeah.
And my answer to myself is that I would have kept playing because the money was important to me, even though it wasn't nearly like it is nowadays. It was important to me, but the craft was more important. Yeah. The doing the job and the loving the work and just loving the preparation. Everything about it was important to me. And so I'm not so sure if I would have walked away from more earning opportunities. Mm-hmm. But relative to this young man, he seems, for him to be making a statement like this 3 years out before he retires, knowing that he's going to make $30 million a year, it's like that thing. What's more important, Vince? If you have the money over here and football over here, and the money keeps going up that you're making, and football stays the same arduous, hard-working detail that you have to pay to be successful, I'm thinking to myself, is he looking at the money or is he looking at the football? He's looking at the money, looking at the football, looking at the money. And I got a feeling, based on what he said relative to being in business, that he's starting to focus on the fact that the guy has created generational wealth for his family. And he hasn't been hurt seriously, hasn't had any major issues. So if he doesn't have that burning passion to be excellent at all times in everything he does, then there's a very good possibility that he walks away from the game, a multi-millionaire, and then he goes on with the next phase of his life. It's very possible and conceivable to me if he doesn't have that number one thing, and that's that passion for the game.
I think you said the right thing is the passion and the mental outlook, Jackie. You got to be mentally intact, and you have to be mentally prepared to go into
Every year.
NFL season. So it's not like if there's any question, yeah, I could see him stepping aside.
Yeah,
but
if somebody throws 40 million at him this last
I could
year,
mentally get prepared again. I think.
I think I could go one more year.
Yeah, have to.
Oh boy, back to quarterbacks, Vince. We saw one of the greats of all time, and he just stepped down. Talking about John Elway, he just stepped down from his post as one of the executives over at the Denver Broncos. Perhaps it had to do with new ownership. I'm not sure, but this guy, in my opinion, was one of the best quarterbacks I ever saw play, Vince. He was a big guy. He could throw the football. You tell me all the time about what kind of throws he was capable of making. I guess he broke some record of yours in high school, right?
He sure did.
You tell us about that. But when I think about John Elway, I think about the drive against Cleveland when he took that team almost 100 yards to get where they got. I think about the struggles that team had over the years. And Barney Shavers being on that team, some of those defensive linemen that I had to deal with over there, and dealing with that altitude. And I think about John Elway winning those 2 Super Bowls. I think it was for Super Bowl 22 and 23, wasn't it? He won those 2 Super Bowls, and he was a central piece, Vince. He was a central piece. And the thing that I can't remember any one particular play, any one thing that he did. But what I do remember is the consistency of him being their quarterback, of him being their leader, and of him being gritty about making plays to give them a chance to win. And that was the thing that I always admired about him from afar. What are some of your Elway memories? And did you value him that much after he broke your record?
Yeah. Not only did he do all that, Jack, he also now, when he retires from football, he wants to be a villain in a cowboy movie.
How about that? A villain in a cowboy movie.
He's not no Kevin Costner, okay? But he ought to give it a shot, though. I think he should. But, I've seen John come out of high school, and he graduated out of Granada Hills High School in the Los Angeles area. And I played at Banning High School, and I went to the North-South Shrine Football Classic at the Memorial Coliseum, Jackie, where we played North. We had one of the best teams ever for an all-star team at high school.
You set a record.
Yeah, we won 42-0, but it was because of the guys I had around me, man. They were awesome.
Is that right?
Oh, man. But, we set a lot of records that day. But when John played, when he was a senior, when he graduated high school, he played for his dad, Jack Elway.
Right.
And they were out to win the game, but not only win the game, but to set records, And this guy had an arm. This kid could throw, and he also could run. And I seen him play when he got drafted by Baltimore and decided he didn't want to play in Baltimore. He wanted to go to Denver.
Right.
So they moved him to Denver. That's what the spot was for him. And Jackie, when you mentioned that 98-yard drive against Cleveland in the playoffs, that set him apart. And he was the only quarterback I think I'd ever remembered seeing roll one direction, Jackie, stop, and throw completely the opposite side of the direction. And I'm talking not 40 yards. I'm talking 60 yards on a line.
He had great arms.
He had that arm strength. He had that. But you said he had that drive.
You could see it.
He was a tough kid.
You could see it.
And I love the way he played football.
I did.
I liked it. I don't think he's one of the all-time greats, but I think he's one of the classic quarterbacks that will never be forgotten, for sure.
And when you think about his value, Vince, at that particular time, I was a little bit put off by the fact that he was going to be the first player selected, and he told the Indianapolis Colts that he wouldn't play for them.
Yeah.
So consequently, what they did was they traded with Denver, who had drafted with the 4th overall pick, future Hall of Famer, in my opinion, Chris Hinton.
Oh,
out of Northwestern University. Big offensive tackle. He went to 7 Pro Bowls. One of the best offensive linemen that I ever saw. Physically, mentally, everything you need, he had the package. But they traded Chris Hinton for John Elway, and he was the 4th pick in that draft. And I was a little bit sour about it.
It didn't hurt Chris Hinton, though.
Didn't hurt him at all.
He went on to have a great career.
But I was a little bit sour about the arrogance, what I perceive to be arrogance in saying, I'm not going to take this honor of being a top pick and go and play for you. I want to play over here.
Now it's common talk.
Now
Jackie,
it happens all the time.
I don't want to play here.
But he was no doubt ahead of his time with being selective about where he wanted to play, and obviously getting to do that. So John Elway was a special guy, and I think we both have a lot of respect for him.
Well, we have another segment real quick. We want to talk about the coaches in the Hall of Fame, Jackie. And Dick Vermeil was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame this last year, and he thinks more coaches need to be enshrined into the Hall of Fame.
He's a strong advocate for a lot of coaches.
Exactly. And I think he continues to talk about coaches like Mike Shanahan, Mike Holmgren, Marty Schottenheimer, Tom Coughlin, George Seifert. I mean, these coaches, Seifert, Tom Coughlin, Mike Shanahan have won 2 Super Bowls, still not in the Hall of Fame. You had Mike Holmgren, who I think was
he was one of the
best. That's almost like an Andy Reid. Okay, so a lot of these guys come out of this coaching tutelage, Jackie. It's this coaching tree.
Right.
They come out. Even Dennis Green, he was part of that group.
Absolutely.
Bill Walsh and this whole entire staff. And these guys went on to have great careers, Jackie.
They did. Sean McVay.
Now he has a bunch of guys doing it. It's a tree. It's very common.
Yes.
And it's kind of the knowledge that you have and what you can do to help present that knowledge to your team. So do you think any of these coaches deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and any other coaches that haven't been mentioned that could possibly be considered?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind when I look at this list that there's some men who operated as coaches for the better part of the 2 decades that I played that I was surprised that they weren't already in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you look at Mike Shanahan. I mean, this guy was, to me, one of the toughest. I mean, his teams played and they mimicked his personality, which I thought was tough and nasty and with a dogged determination that they were going to win at all costs. And I just thought he was special.
And he's got his son, Kyle,
absolutely,
who he learned a lot from.
Who I happen to think that he's got to be a mentor for, and maybe even on the staff up there in San Francisco.
I think so, too.
John Lynch played for his dad, so why not hire this guy to come and help your son out? So I think that certainly, when you mention his name, you wonder why he isn't there. Dan Reeves was another one. Mike Holmgren. I played in my first Pro Bowl, Vince. They told me, said, Jackie, don't worry about it. They're just going to throw a drop back pass here, drop back pass there, run inside zone to the right, outside zone to the left, inside zone to the outside zone to the. They painted a picture like it was going to be a simple thing to go and play in the Pro Bowl. Mm-hmm. Normally you have to deal with Howie Long and Mark Gastineau and all these talented defensive linemen. So I'm thinking, okay, I can handle that. We get there, and Mike Holmgren rolls out the playbook for the Pro Bowl, and I'm thinking, man, there's no time.
How you gonna learn it?
There's no time to do anything but learn and study. The playbook was this thick, Vince. I could not believe it.
They didn't want you having any fun over there. They wanted you sitting there.
There was absolutely no way I was going to
enjoy your hotel room just reading their playbook.
It was the worst Pro Bowl of the 7 that I played in.
Did you win?
We won. It was the biggest blowout of all the Pro Bowls that I played.
Then maybe it was worth it.
We blew them out. I couldn't believe it. But Vince, the detail. The methodology and the volume in the West Coast offense at that particular time, I was awestruck just to see it, because I thought there's no way that he's going to expect us to learn this stuff and operate like this in 4 days. It was just an unbelievable experience to see what that West Coast offense has to offer.
It's funny, Jackie. Some players like to absorb all this information. As a quarterback, I want to have as much at my disposal as possible.
So you would have appreciated that.
I would appreciate that. We have a little flag football team, Jackie, and the kids were 8 years old. Uh-huh. And I gave them a playbook, and the coaches, the parents didn't even know how to read the playbook. I said, no, they'll get this thing. They'll get it. They've got to just keep working at it. That's their homework. They got to, go take it home, come back the next day. Right. By the end of the year, Jackie, they were playing good.
They were able to run all those plays.
They're running the plays, man.
8 years old?
Oh, yeah, 8 years old. They got to start learning
I
something.
think an 8-year-old brain is better than a 30-year-old brain.
Could be sometimes. Could be.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I got another question to ask you, Jackie, regarding the Patriots. We got to go to New England Patriots. And one of the great offensive coaches, I think, that's ever coached the offensive line was with Bill Belichick for many years. And his name is Dante Scarnecchia.
Absolutely.
And he's being enshrined this year in the Patriots Hall of Fame. Jackie, you were an offensive lineman. And you know the skill level that's involved to playing. And you know how important a good coach is. Do you think he's one of the best coaches of ever? And then how would he stack up with guys like Jim Hanifin, Hudson Houck,
Dan
Alex
Radakovich,
Yeah.
Alex Gibbs. He stacked right up even with them.
Would he?
There's no doubt in my mind. Vince, I watched this guy coach the offensive line of the New England Patriots for at least a decade and a half, maybe longer than that.
Yeah.
I saw guys that were prototypically built to play the positions, center, guard, and tackle. But what I did not see was what I thought was cutting-edge technology, cutting-edge technique in everything they did. But what they consistently did, Vince, and when I say consistently, I mean game in and game out, is they got their guys blocked. They did their assignments, and they gave the football team an opportunity to be successful at the offensive line position. Now, when I was coaching out of the Azusa Pacific University right out here, the Division II school, I was watching the Patriots, and I'm thinking, I like this particular run game that they have right here, because what they're doing is that they're bringing a guy from the outside of the formation. He's coming into the box. He's whacking the defender, and then they're running a simple outside zone pattern off of that whack block. And I remember calling him, and I asked if I told him who I was, and I said, will you afford me the opportunity to speak to Dante Scarnecchia? I'd like to ask him about a couple of things. He returned my phone call. He was very gracious. He returned my phone call. And I cut to the chase. I said, listen, you are running a whack play that's off of the inside zone scheme that's really, really paying big dividends for you. I said, can you explain that to me? I'm coaching out here at Azusa Pacific.
Yeah.
Vince, he took me through the details. I had a pen. I wrote down everything he said. I went through about 10 different things that he said, and the light went off in my head. We installed those plays, that series of plays at Azusa Pacific University, and that year, the very first year he gave me this information, we had a running back, Terrell Watson, to have more rushing yards than any running back in the nation playing college football.
Wow.
Right out there at Azusa
You must have used that play a lot.
We ran the heck out of that. We ran it on both sides, Vince, and it complemented what we were doing, some simple stuff that we were doing beautifully. And the way he explained it, the rules to the play. It's amazing how he connected the rules to the play that would afford you the opportunity to be consistently successful. I thought Dante Scarnecchia was one of the really bright guys. One other thing about Dante Scarnecchia, he coached Ryan Wendell, who is now the Rams offensive line coach. Ryan Wendell played for him. Mm-hmm. And there is no doubt in my mind with Ryan Wendell being a young offensive line coach, dynamic young guy, being a young offensive line coach, there's no way that he hasn't consulted with Dante Scarnecchia. Because Dante, so I'm looking for the Rams offense this particular year to have a lot more production in their running game, which is what I've been calling for ever since Todd Gurley, since he got hurt right before that Super Bowl. So I think the Rams are going to be a prolific running football team, and you complement him with Cooper Kupp and the quarterback that they have, and maybe another wide receiver like you suggested, and I think the Rams offense is going to be back and rolling this year.
And we've talked over the years, Jackie, about watching New England play in Super Bowl after Super Bowl and commenting on how creative they were up front, not only with their passing attack, but their offensive line ability to create running holes, running gaps for their running backs to continue to move the chains down the field. And so much of the conversation we used to have was the coach, not Bill Belichick. Of course, Bill Belichick was more a defensive-minded coach, but he had Dante Scarnecchia on the offensive line.
Absolutely.
Creating these plays up front, and they played as a unit. And I think that's what they have to play.
All the time.
They play together, not just one, not the center or the right guard. It was the entire offensive line play in unison to create the hole and create the pass protection for the quarterback, for Tom Brady for so many years. And I think Tom felt very comfortable behind that offensive line because they had the coaching, Jack.
They had the coaching. They were being
starts with at the top.
They were taught not only how to do the basic things, but recourse. recourse is, what do you do when the meat and potatoes don't work? You
Yeah.
serve up the
Boom.
everything else.
Our
And
counter.
They had it all to be able to serve up. And for us, people like us here at the Rams, and I think around the country, when we looked at the Patriots offensive line and the way they operated, we were envious because we knew they were well coached. We didn't think in many cases that they were stacked up with us physically or whatever. We didn't think some of them was quite as big or some of them was quite as quick. But Vince, they were very productive as a unit. And Dante Scarnecchia, soon to be a Patriot Hall of Famer, is the reason why. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Well, you know what? We're talking about coaches, Jackie, and if you had to trade places with a coach for a week and to take over and prepare the team, what team would you play for? Now, I kind of almost know what you're going to tell me, but I have my own thoughts. But what coach would you want to trade places with for the week?
I got two guys, Vince.
All right.
I got two guys, and these are based on my personal observations as a former player. The first guy I got to meet and sit down with, he had me to come to his practice facility on an off day and work with one of his young offensive linemen. His name was Courtney Van Buren. And so I went down there and I spent the whole day with the young man. He was a big, talented, athletic guy. And I remember talking to Marty Schottenheimer, and I remember the fire that I saw in his eyes when he talked about the details that he wanted to get covered. I mean, this guy was intense, Marty Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. So I have this big awe of wonderment about him, what it would have been like to get to know him and to see him operate.
When
with
he
a
was
whole
with
team.
what, Kansas City?
No,
or
this is when he was
Chargers?
with the Chargers.
The
This
Chargers,
is when he was with
okay.
the Chargers.
All right.
So he left me kind of awestruck after being around him. But the guy, Vince, unquestionably, in my mind, and I don't want to replace this guy. What I want to do is sit in on his meetings.
Oh.
And I don't want to sitting on his meetings, Vince. I want to mirror this guy. I want to mirror this guy for a day. I want to mirror him for a week. I want to mirror this guy for a month.
I know what you're
I want to mirror this guy for a year. And it's Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says about the coaches and what he can't do and what he specializes in, what he does. All I know is this. I have never seen teams more consistently operating with congruence than the teams that he's put together.
Yeah.
His teams play well on offense, literally offense, defense, and special teams. And this guy is the leader of the group, regardless of who the assistant coaches have been. He has been the guy, he has been the glue that has kept that franchise successful for the better part of the last 2.5 decades. And if there's one guy that I want to pick his mind,
That's it.
It's Bill Belichick. It's simple as that.
Well, for me to answer that question, Jackie, you raise a really good point, because Bill Belichick's style of coaching is phenomenal for me. And as a quarterback, thinking about terminology and different innuendos of the passing game, they're so technical, okay? And the terms they use, I love to go to New England to understand their offensive terminology, and their scheme, how they scheme. And when they run a route, the depth of the route and the way they run the route, there's a name for everything they do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's a whole different language. And Josh McDaniels did such a great job, and he's taken that to the Raiders. If I were to take a team today to go look, just because of personnel and what they do on offense, obviously offense is my deal, right?
Absolutely.
I would have to go to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'll have to switch with Andy Reid. Andy, you come take my place, I'll take your place.
But how are you going to learn from him if you
But
switch
that's
places?
okay, because I got the guys out there. And I'll hear it from Patrick Mahomes.
So you want to go there and show Andy Reid how you can coach?
No, I can't outdo Andy Reid, but I'll tell you one thing though. I think it would be fun for me to go back and to get involved in that system, because that system is complicated.
Yeah,
it is. And it's a system that requires a lot of training and a lot of intuition.
Yeah.
And it took Patrick Mahomes a ways. Why do you think Andy Reid is sitting there on the sideline when he's a young quarterback between each series, Jackie? And they're talking about what just happened,
Right.
what's going to happen next.
Right.
Okay, it's always that mental conditioning that has to happen for teams to be successful, in my mind.
And Vince, the interesting thing about Andy Reid, you mentioned him, is Andy Reid was an old offensive lineman.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was some quarterback or wide receiver or running back. He was an offensive lineman. And so the thing that I find most interesting, and I had a brief coaching stint in the NFL, failed miserably, I might add. I'm not ashamed to say it because I just wasn't ready for the job, to be honest with you. But when I think about the knowledge that Andy Reid must possess, relative to the passing game, relative to remember how he was getting guys wide open in the Super Bowl? Twice they did it, two different formations,
That's
similar play on both sides.
Study.
You gotta know what you gotta know what you're doing, man. You don't replace people like that.
Yeah.
People like that he's paid his dues to learn the nuances of what it means to be a great offensive mind in the West Coast system, which is the most prominent system we've seen.
Yeah.
And he's done it with grace, dignity, and a real tough, dogged determination to make it work. And those are the things that I admire most about Andy Reid.
It's a variation of the West Coast offense.
Absolutely.
It is similar,
Absolutely.
but not exactly the same. And I think as we saw, the way it'll be interesting to see how they react without Eric Bieniemy with that team, because he's been such a big part and such a crucial element of that entire system.
It'll also be interesting to see how the Washington Commanders start changing up what they're doing now that Eric Bieniemy is there. That's going to be a good watch too.
It'll be a good watch. Talking about a good watch, Jackie, you know what? Did you watch, and we'll close out with this, did you watch the first ceremonial pitch?
Oh, I knew you were going to bring that up.
Guardians, they had,
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Travis Kelce, who just won the Super Bowl, he and his mom, they go out. They should have brought Jason with them, though.
I think Jason
he would have did better, but Travis, maybe he was just off of Saturday Night Live. Remember, he was hosting Saturday Night Live, but anyway, he goes there. And he's going to throw the first pitch out, Jackie. Did you see it?
Yes.
You saw it, okay. All right. He winds up and gets ready to throw the ball. Yeah, there's a guy at home plate getting ready to catch a ball. The ball, it dropped halfway to home plate. It didn't even get to the batter's box.
And then everybody cleared out as if we don't know where this pitch is going.
I think we got to practice on that a little bit.
You can't be good at everything, I guess.
Hey, how would you have done, Jack? You would have hit the guy.
I think I would have thrown a slow.
But you would have made it there,
I would have given it a lob, so at least it goes to the catcher. Don't just bounce it off the ground.
Throw a changeup or
10 yards out front.
Yeah. I think I could have hit home plate.
I don't know what he was thinking about on that throw. Maybe he was trying to get discovered because Vince, he did have a little heat on that throw. He was throwing it pretty fast.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe he thought they had the gun on it, seeing how fast he throw or something.
Oh, boy.
But that was awful. It was awful to watch, Vince.
Well, Jackie, that closes for another live. We want you to continue to follow us on Instagram at on.point.live.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go there and hit that subscriber button. And if you have any questions or comments, make sure you interact with us. Vince and I are having a blast, and we'd love to have you along for the ride.
So for Jackie Slater, I'm Vince Ferragamo. We want to thank you for watching and listening. So until next time, stay on point.